It started with a look that lasted too long. A touch that lingered when it should not have. I remember the heat in that small office, the sound of my heartbeat echoing louder than the hum of the air conditioner. His hand brushed mine as I handed him a file, and I felt something I had not felt in years, wanted. That night, when the rain poured outside and my loneliness met his desire halfway, I did not think about vows, rings, or the man waiting at home. I only thought about how alive I felt when his lips touched my skin. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I betrayed the man who trusted me with his whole heart. Before I go deeper, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. You have no idea how much your support means. To all my new viewers and returning ones who are yet to subscribe, thank you for being here. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, because your support is the fuel that keeps this channel alive. Remember to share your thoughts in the comments after the hook, because your engagement is what keeps stories like this going. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in North Carolina. On the outside, my life looked perfect. I was 34, married for 9 years to Evan, a man everyone described as kind, dependable, and loyal. He worked long hours at a local construction firm, and I managed a small marketing team at an advertising agency downtown. We had a modest home, 2 children, and the kind of love story people thought was unshakable. But inside that picture-perfect life, something had started to wither. Evan's love had become predictable, routine. We barely talked beyond bills, schedules, or grocery lists. Our nights were filled with silence, comfortable but cold. I used to lie awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was what marriage was supposed to feel like, safe, but empty. Then there was Daniel. He was my coworker. Confident, charming, and dangerously attentive. He had a way of looking at me like he could read everything I never said. When he laughed, I felt warmth. When he complimented my work, it lingered in my mind for days. He was divorced, slightly older than me, with tired eyes that carried stories of heartbreak. And in those eyes, I found something I had been starving for, attention. It started harmlessly. Shared lunches at the office. Late-night brainstorming sessions about campaigns. Texts that began as work-related but slowly shifted into personal territory. "You deserve to be seen, Lauren," he once said, his voice low and sincere. That sentence echoed in my chest like a forbidden melody. One evening, a storm had delayed everyone from leaving the office. The streets were flooded, and the building hummed with the sound of rain slapping against the glass. Daniel offered to drive me home once the rain stopped. While we waited, we sat in his office, talking about life, our dreams, our disappointments, our marriages that felt more like duties than desires. I should have left the moment his hand brushed mine. But I stayed. The way he looked at me made me feel like I mattered again. He made me laugh, and for a moment, I forgot the numbness that had defined my marriage. I did not plan to cross any lines. But loneliness has a way of blurring boundaries. By the time the rain stopped, it was almost 10 p.m. The office was dark, except for the soft glow of his desk lamp. I stood to leave, and he walked me to the door. But when I turned to say goodnight, he stepped closer. There was no hesitation in his eyes, just an unspoken understanding of what we both wanted but knew we should not have. His lips met mine before I could even think. It was slow, deep, and full of everything I had been missing: passion, hunger, attention. I should have stopped him. I should have walked away. But my heart betrayed me first. One kiss turned into another. His hands found the back of my neck, pulling me closer as the sound of thunder rolled outside. The world disappeared. All I could feel was the warmth of his breath, the rhythm of our hearts, and the burning guilt already forming inside me. When it ended, I stood there, trembling, not from cold, but from shame. I whispered that it could never happen again. He nodded, but his eyes said something different. Driving home that night, my hands shook on the steering wheel. The rain had stopped, but my heart raced as if I was still in the middle of a storm. Evan was asleep when I got home. I stared at his peaceful face, wondering how I could have done what I did. Guilt hit me like a wave I could not escape. The days that followed were a blur. Every time I looked at Evan, I felt sick. He kissed me goodbye in the mornings, and I pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was falling apart. Daniel kept his distance for a while, but then the texts started again, gentle, caring, dangerous. "I cannot stop thinking about that night," he wrote once. Neither could I. Each time I told myself it was over, I found myself drawn back to him. It was like being caught between desire and destruction. I knew the fire would burn me, but I kept reaching for it anyway. Evan, meanwhile, remained the same man, steady, loving, oblivious. He made me coffee in the mornings and kissed my forehead before work. He trusted me completely, and that trust was the sharpest blade cutting through my conscience. One evening, I caught my reflection in the mirror after coming home from work. My makeup was perfect, my hair in place, but my eyes looked hollow. I no longer recognized the woman staring back. I had become a stranger in my own life, a woman living two realities, both equally unbearable. I sat on the bathroom floor and cried quietly, afraid that if Evan heard me, he would ask why. And I would have no answer that could ever justify what I had done. That was when I realized something terrifying. I had not just cheated on my husband. I had cheated myself out of peace, integrity, and everything I once believed in. But the worst was yet to come. Because secrets have a way of demanding to be told. And mine was about to destroy everything I loved. I used to believe that guilt fades with time. That if you ignore it long enough, it becomes quiet. But guilt is not silent, it whispers in the smallest moments, seeps into your sleep, and sits heavy in the space between every heartbeat. For weeks after that night, I tried to live like nothing had happened. I smiled when Evan spoke, laughed at the right moments, cooked dinner, and tucked our children into bed. But every time he said, "I love you," my chest tightened, and I felt that burning ache of shame crawl back up my throat. At work, Daniel and I pretended everything was normal. But our eyes told the truth our mouths dared not speak. Every meeting, every shared glance, every accidental touch carried the weight of what we had done. It became unbearable. The first real sign that my secret was beginning to rot came one morning at breakfast. Evan asked if I was all right. His tone was casual, but his eyes lingered on me longer than usual. "You have been distant lately," he said softly. "Is everything okay at work?" I froze. My spoon clinked against the bowl, and I forced a smile. "Just tired," I replied. "It has been a busy week." He nodded, accepting it, but I could tell his mind was working quietly behind that calm exterior. Evan was the kind of man who noticed the smallest changes. The way my phone now stayed face down. The way I seemed lost in thought even when sitting beside him. I began deleting messages, double-checking my phone, and staying late at work just to keep the illusion intact. But lies demand constant maintenance, and mine was starting to crumble under its own weight. Daniel was changing too. What began as quiet connections soon turned into something heavier, darker. He wanted more time, more attention, more of me. One night, while I was home cooking dinner, my phone buzzed repeatedly. It was him. "I miss you. When can I see you again? I cannot stop thinking about you." Each message felt like both a thrill and a threat. I had promised myself I would end it, but every time I tried, his words pulled me back. There was something intoxicating about being desired so intensely. Yet, at the same time, it made me afraid of what I was becoming, and afraid of how close I was to losing everything. A few days later, he surprised me by waiting in the parking lot after work. I remember the panic that rushed through me when I saw his car. He stepped out, smiling, confident as always. "I just wanted to see you," he said. "You have been avoiding me." I told him it was risky, that people could see us. He laughed and said, "Let them. I am tired of pretending." Those words pierced me. Pretending was the only thing keeping my life together. Back home, things with Evan started to shift. He became quieter, almost withdrawn. He watched me more closely, not out of suspicion at first, but concern. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching television, he reached for my hand. I flinched, not because I did not love him, but because I was terrified of him feeling the truth beneath my skin. He sighed and looked at me. "You feel far away, Lauren," he said softly. "Even when you are right next to me." His words broke me. I wanted to confess everything, to tell him that I had made the worst mistake of my life. But instead, I smiled weakly and said, "I am just tired, Evan. I will be fine." He kissed my forehead and whispered, "Whatever it is, we will get through it." That was the kind of man he was, faithful even when he did not know he was being betrayed. One Friday evening, Daniel called me after I had put the kids to bed. His voice was firm. "I need to see you," he said. "I cannot do this halfway anymore." I told him it was impossible, that Evan was home. He grew silent for a moment, then said, "You think you can just erase me? After everything we shared?" His tone was sharp, desperate. I hung up, my heart pounding. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying the sound of his voice, the edge in his tone, the danger of it. The next morning, Evan mentioned he would be taking the kids to his parents' house for the weekend. That should have made me feel relieved. Instead, I felt something dark settle in my chest, a mix of fear and temptation. Later that day, Daniel showed up at my house. I had not told him where I lived, but he had found out. I opened the door, shocked and trembling. He smiled softly, holding a coffee cup in one hand. "I just wanted to see your face," he said. I told him he should not be there. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch sent chills through me, half desire, half dread. I told him to leave. He leaned in, whispered something that made my heart sink. "You will never be done with me." When he finally left, I locked the door and sat on the floor, shaking. The secret had stopped feeling like a thrill. It was now a living thing, a disease spreading through every part of my life. A few nights later, I came home late from work. Evan was sitting at the dining table, his phone in his hand, his face pale. The air was heavy, and I knew instantly that something was wrong. He looked up at me, eyes clouded with confusion and hurt. "Who is Daniel?" he asked quietly. The room spun. My knees almost gave out. "He is a coworker," I said too quickly. He nodded slowly, then turned his phone around. On the screen was a message from Daniel that had somehow reached Evan by mistake. A simple sentence that changed everything. "I cannot wait to taste your lips again." I stopped breathing. Time froze. Evan's voice broke the silence. "Tell me this is not what I think it is." There were 100 lies I could have told. But none would have mattered. My silence was the only confession he needed. He stood up slowly, his eyes glassy, his voice trembling. "How long?" I could not answer. Tears fell down my face. He took a step back, shaking his head as if trying to wake himself from a nightmare. "You promised me forever, Lauren," he said. "Was any of it real?" That night, I slept in the guest room. Evan did not speak to me again. He packed a bag and left early the next morning with the kids. The house felt hollow, stripped of air and warmth. Daniel tried to reach me, but I blocked him. The sight of his name made me sick. He had become the symbol of everything I had lost. In one night, the perfect life I built collapsed like fragile glass. I had no one to blame but myself. I remember sitting in the kitchen, staring at the empty coffee mug Evan used every morning. His fingerprints were still faintly visible on the handle, and that broke me more than anything. He had been real. His love had been real. And I destroyed it for something that never was. The secret had finally been exposed. But what followed, the silence, the distance, the raw heartbreak, was worse than I ever imagined. Because once you destroy trust, there is no way to rebuild the same home on the same ground. And as the days passed, I realized I was not just losing my husband. I was losing myself completely. There is no silence louder than the one left after betrayal. It echoes in every corner of the house, in every room that once held laughter. After Evan left with the children, the silence swallowed me whole. Days passed without his voice, without their footsteps, without the smell of breakfast drifting from the kitchen. I wandered through each room like a ghost haunting my own life. The first morning alone, I found one of my daughter's toys on the floor, a small pink teddy bear she never slept without. I held it close and cried until my chest hurt. That tiny toy became a symbol of everything I had shattered. I had not just betrayed a man, I had fractured a family. A week later, Evan came back, not to reconcile, but to confront. The knock on the door was sharp, and my heart raced as I opened it. He stood there, calm but burning with the kind of anger that no words could soothe. His eyes were swollen, his jaw tight, his voice steady but trembling. "I just need to understand," he said, stepping inside. "Why him? Why any of it?" I stood frozen, my throat dry. "I do not know," I whispered. He laughed bitterly. "You do not know? You destroy everything we built, and you cannot even tell me why." His words hit like blows. I wanted to scream that I had been lonely, unseen, desperate for something that made me feel alive again. But how could I say that without sounding cruel? He had given me everything he knew how to give. It was me who went searching for something more, and in doing so, I lost it all. He looked around the living room, at the photos on the wall, at the family portraits that no longer made sense. "I thought we were happy," he said. "Maybe not perfect, but happy enough." I tried to speak, but my voice broke. "I was wrong, Evan. I made a mistake I cannot undo." He stared at me for a long time, then said quietly, "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was a choice." Those words cut deep because they were true. That evening, he gathered a few of his clothes and some of the children's things. I watched him move through the house we built together, his every step heavy with heartbreak. He stopped by the doorway, looked at me one last time, and said, "I loved you more than I loved myself, Lauren. But I cannot live with what you did. You broke something that will never heal." I wanted to beg him to stay, to tell him I would do anything to fix it. But there are no words that can rebuild trust once it has been burned to ashes. He left, closing the door gently behind him. That quiet click sounded like a full stop at the end of everything we once were. The following weeks were a blur. I went to work pretending to be fine, but the walls felt like they were closing in. Daniel still worked there, and every time I saw him, guilt burned in my stomach. He tried to speak to me a few times, but I ignored him. Eventually, he stopped trying. One afternoon, I walked past his office and saw him with someone else, a younger woman laughing at his jokes, her eyes shining the way mine once did. It hit me like a punch. The man I had risked everything for had already moved on. I was just another story he could forget. I left work early that day. When I got home, I sat on the floor of the empty living room and cried until the sun went down. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that suffocates you slowly. People often talk about the thrill of forbidden love, but they rarely talk about the aftermath, the lonely mornings, the aching regret, the cold bed that used to be warm. They do not talk about the shame that follows you like a shadow, or the way you start avoiding your reflection because it reminds you of the person you became. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors stopped waving. The whispers followed me everywhere, the woman who cheated on her husband, the mother who ruined her family. I became the story people told when they wanted to remind themselves that good people can fall too. There were nights when I sat in my car outside Evan's new apartment, just to see a glimpse of the light in the window, to know they were okay. I never knocked. I never called. I just sat there, crying silently, watching the life I threw away from a distance. One afternoon, Evan called. His voice was calm but distant. "I think it is time we make things official," he said. "The divorce papers are ready." I agreed quietly. There was nothing left to fight for. I signed the papers 2 days later. When the courier took them away, I felt the final thread snap. It was over. That night, I walked through the house for the last time. Every corner told a story: our first Christmas together, the birthdays, the late-night talks, the fights, the laughter. All of it now belonged to a past I could never return to. I packed my things slowly, leaving behind anything that felt like his. The photo of our wedding day, the coffee mug he loved, the blanket we used to share on movie nights. Those things no longer belonged to me. Before leaving, I sat on the front steps and watched the sun set behind the trees. For the first time in months, I let myself breathe, not with peace, but with acceptance. I will not pretend that what I did had any silver lining. It destroyed my marriage, wounded good people, and left scars that time will not erase. But as painful as it was, it forced me to face myself. For so long, I searched for love outside when what I really needed was to heal